What would happen if you could let go of the heaviest stone you carry inside? Not the stone you show others, but the one you bury deep, the one carved with guilt, regret, and shame, the one that whispers late at night, "You should have known better. You failed. You are not enough." Most of us know that voice. It follows us like a shadow. It tells us that our past mistakes define us, that our future is stained, that we are somehow fundamentally unworthy of peace. Some people try to silence it by working harder, building careers, earning status. Others drown in distraction, in endless scrolling, in noise and busyness. But in the quiet hours when the world is still, the stone presses against the heart again. This is where Alan Watts enters the story. Not as a guru with commandments, not as a priest with dogma, but as a mischievous philosopher who dared ask the one question we never think to ask. What if there is nothing to forgive? Watts, with his crisp British accent and playful smile, spent his life dismantling the illusions that kept people chained. He saw clearly that the human condition is shaped by guilt, religious guilt, social guilt, personal guilt. We are told from childhood that we must be good, that mistakes are failures, that sins are permanent stains. And yet, when we look closely, we see that the universe itself does not operate on guilt. Trees do not apologize for dropping their leaves. Rivers do not beg forgiveness for overflowing their banks. Fire does not regret its burning. Why, then, should we? The radical point Watts made, again and again in lectures and writings and conversations, is that guilt and shame are products of the mind, not a reality. They are stories we tell ourselves, stories reinforced by culture and religion, but they are not inherent truths. Forgiveness, then, is not about earning your way back into worthiness. It is about waking up from the illusion that you ever fell out of it. And this is why his philosophy matters today more than ever. We live in an age of relentless pressure. Social media amplifies comparison and self-judgment. Productivity culture tells us that rest is laziness. Advertising whispers that we are never enough until we buy one more thing. Even spirituality itself sometimes becomes a new cage, a race to be more enlightened, more mindful, more pure. Everywhere we turn, there's a subtle suggestion that who we are right now is not sufficient. Is it any wonder so many of us walk around carrying invisible stones? Stones of regret for the past. Stones of fear for the future. Stones of resentment toward others who wounded us. Stones of shame for not being the person we think we should be. Alan Watts was not afraid to say, "Put the stone down." Forgiveness of self and of the world is not indulgence. It is sanity. It is freedom. And it is only possible when we stop believing the lie that life is a cosmic courtroom where points are tallied and sentences handed out. Watts tore down that illusion with humor, with paradox, with stories from Zen and Taoism that remind us of a deeper truth. We are the universe, playing, and in a play, even mistakes belong to performance. To forgive yourself is to recognize that you are not a broken machine in need of fixing, but a wave of the ocean, a movement of the towel. To forgive the world is to see that its chaos and cruelty are not signs of corruption, but the same dance of opposites, light and dark, joy and sorrow, creation and destruction, that has always been. Watts was a bridge between worlds. He brought Eastern wisdom, the fluidity of Taoism, the paradox of Zen, the non-duality of Hindu philosophy, into conversation with Western struggles, guilt, anxiety, alienation. He spoke not as a distant sage, but as a fellow traveler, a man who knew excess, who knew regret, who knew the very human yearning to be free. That made his voice trustworthy. He wasn't telling us how to be perfect. He was inviting us to see that perfection was never required. And so, this journey, how to forgive yourself and forgive the world, is not about adding another burden to your shoulders. It is about setting the burden down. It is about remembering that forgiveness is not something you do, but something you see. By the time we finish, you may discover a new clarity about who you are, a release from unnecessary burdens, a deeper appreciation of life's play, and perhaps even the courage to let go, to forgive yourself, and in doing so, to forgive the world. Because the truth, whispered gently in the voice of Alan Watts, is this: you are not guilty. You are not broken. You are something the whole universe is doing. And the universe does not condemn itself. Have you noticed how exhausting it is to be in control? Every morning we wake with a list in our heads. Emails to send, bills to pay, meetings to attend, deadlines to meet, people to impress. Our culture tells us that the measure of a good life is mastery. Control your time. Control your emotions. Control your career. Control your future. But beneath the surface of all this striving, there's a quiet panic. Because deep down, we know the truth. We don't control very much at all. We cannot control the beating of our hearts or the firing of our neurons. We cannot control the weather, the economy, or the fragile fabric of our relationships. And yet we live as if control is the only thing standing between us and disaster. We grip tighter, plan harder, worry deeper. But the more we grasp, the more life slips through our fingers. Alan Watts loved to reveal this paradox with humor. He would lean back in his chair, take a puff of his pipe, and say, "To control yourself is to be controlled." In other words, the very act of trying to master life is what binds us. He would often point to the rhythm of breathing as a perfect metaphor. Try to control your breath, and you quickly feel suffocated. But let your breath flow naturally, and it sustains you without effort. Life itself is like that. A movement, a dance, a flow. To insist on control is to suffocate the dance. To relax, to trust, is to breathe freely again. There's a Zen story Watts often cited of a man running from a tiger. He clambers down a cliff, holding onto a vine, only to find another tiger waiting below. Above him, the first tiger roars. Below him, the second tiger paces. At that moment, he notices a ripe strawberry growing beside the vine. He plucks it, places it in his mouth, and tastes its sweetness. That, Watts would say, is life. We are caught between past regrets and future fears, between the tiger above and the tiger below. But in our obsession with escape, we miss the strawberry dangling right here, right now. Control is an illusion, but presence is real. And this has everything to do with forgiveness. Because the greatest weight we carry is the belief that if only we had controlled things better, life would have been different. If only we had said the right words. If only we had avoided the mistake. If only we had managed the outcome. But what reminds us, you are never in total control. Life is not a machine you operate. It is an unfolding, a dance in which you participate. The mistakes you regret were not personal failures. They were steps in the rhythm of the cosmos. Forgiveness begins here, with the shattering of the illusion of control. You forgive yourself because you see the truth. You could not have scripted it differently. You forgive the world because you realize it is not a stage built for your plans. Instead, life is more like music. You don't play music to reach the last note as quickly as possible. You play for the unfolding, the harmony, the play of sound. If you demanded control, get to the end, you would destroy the song. In the same way, demanding absolute control over life destroys its music. So let us loosen our grip. Let us put down the whip of self-condemnation. Forgiveness arises when we see that nothing has truly gone wrong. It has only gone differently than we expected. And sometimes, in hindsight, the unexpected path reveals a beauty the rigid plan never could. And so the first step toward forgiving yourself and forgiving the world is to exhale, to recognize that the weight you carry, the guilt, the regret, the resentment, is tied to the illusion that you should have been in charge all along. But you were never in charge. You were dancing with forces far older, far wilder, far larger than your small will. As Watts would say, the more we struggle for life, the less we have it. The gift comes in surrender, in realizing you are being lived by the universe as much as you are living it. From here, the journey naturally unfolds into the next realization. If control is an illusion, then who or what are you really? Because once you see that you are not the little controller inside your head, you begin to see something astonishing. You are not separate from the universe at all. Think about the last time you felt small. Maybe you were standing beneath a sky thick with stars, each one burning for millions of years longer than your entire species has existed. Maybe you were watching the ocean, waves rising and falling without end, realizing that no matter how hard you work, the tide will not bend to your schedule. Or maybe it was something quieter, sitting alone in your room at night, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence, and suddenly you felt like a fragile, fleeting accident in an indifferent universe. That sense of smallness can feel unbearable. Our culture tells us, you are separate, isolated, just one tiny self trying to survive against the chaos of the world. And so we armor ourselves. We build careers, reputations, identities. We polish the I and protect it fiercely, as though it were something solid, permanent. But here lies the riddle Alan Watts loved to unravel. What if the self you are defending is only a mask? Watts would say it with a mischievous grin. You are not a stranger in this universe. You are the universe, playing at being you. The idea sounds absurd at first. Poetic nonsense, maybe even comforting delusion. But Watts invited us to look deeper. What do you mean when you say, I? Do you mean your body, your thoughts, your memories, your name? None of these are fixed. The body changes every moment. Thoughts flicker and vanish. Memories are selective and malleable. Even your name is something given to you, not chosen, not intrinsic. So what is this I we hold on to so tightly? In Taoism, they speak of the Tao, the nameless source, the great flow that moves through rivers and clouds, through birth and death, through stars and silence. You cannot see it as an object because it is the movement itself. What's translated this ancient truth into a modern whisper? You are not in the universe. You are the universe happening right here. As you consider a wave in the ocean. A wave rises, crests, and falls, and then it is gone. But did it ever exist apart from the ocean? No, it was the ocean, for a moment, taking a particular shape. You are like that. You are not an isolated creature. You are a movement of the cosmos. Like a wave is the ocean, like a leaf is the tree. And here's the staggering implication. If you are the universe, then there is nothing ultimately to forgive. Because who would you forgive? The wave for being the wave? The leaf for falling in autumn? The rain for dissolving into the soil? Forgiveness begins to look less like a moral duty and more like recognition of reality. When you see yourself as part of the whole, guilt softens. When you see others as movements of the same whole, resentment dissolves. We stop imagining a separate me fighting against a hostile world. We begin to breathe easier, because the boundary between inside and outside was always porous, always an illusion. Alan Watts often played with this paradox through humor. He'd say, you didn't come into this world. You came out of it like a wave from the ocean, like a leaf from a tree. This flips the entire story we tell ourselves. You are not an alien visitor. You are not here to dominate or to escape. You are here because you are here, as a universe exploring itself through your eyes, your hands, your laughter, your tears. And notice the relief this brings. If you are the universe, you don't need to justify your existence. You don't need to prove your worth to some cosmic accountant keeping score. Your very being is already the permission. Your life is already the dance. This is why forgiveness becomes not just possible, but inevitable. You forgive yourself because your mistakes are not crimes against the order of things. They're the order of things, unfolding in the only way they could. You forgive the world because even its chaos and cruelty are not outside the whole, but expressions of mysterious rhythm we cannot fully grasp. It is in this spirit that Watts would laugh and pour another drink, reminding his listeners, the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet, everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. To forgive is to rest. To rest in the truth that you are already home, already part of the great happening. And once you see this, once you feel yourself as a universe in motion, something else stirs within you. You begin to realize that life is not a problem to solve, not a mountain to conquer. It is something far more playful, far more musical. When was the last time you truly danced? Not at a wedding where you shuffled awkwardly, glancing at the crowd to make sure you didn't look foolish. Not in a club where you moved to impress someone. I mean really danced. When the music carried you, when your body forgot itself, when you were not the dancer, but the dance itself. That feeling, that flow, is what Alan Watts believed life is all about. We, however, have been taught something entirely different. From childhood, we are told that life is a journey, a climb up a mountain, a straight road with a destination. Work hard, Keep your head down, suffer now, and eventually you will arrive to success, to happiness, to peace, to salvation. The story is always the same. Someday, not today. This is why what's called it the wisdom of insecurity. Because insecurity, once embraced, becomes wisdom. It teaches us to live now, not later, to love without clinging, to trust the dance without needing a final destination. And this wisdom is the soil of forgiveness. We forgive ourselves because we no longer demand perfection from a shifting, flowing existence. We forgive others because we see they too are surfing waves beyond their control. And here, something radical begins to happen. Once you stop living in fear of insecurity, the ego itself starts to lose its grip. The voice in your head that says, I must protect myself, I must control this, I must be certain, begins to soften. Close your eyes for a moment and listen to the voice in your head. You know the one I mean, the constant commentator. The one that says, you should have done better. You should have known. You should be more successful. You should be different. It nags, it criticizes, it judges, it compares. And sometimes it flatters you. Look how well you did. Look how much better you are than them. This voice feels like you. But Alan wants to lean forward, grin, and whisper. That voice is a trick. He called the ego the greatest sleight of hand in human existence, because it convinces us that we are a little homunculus, a tiny manager inside our heads, pulling the levers of life. It convinces us that we are separate from the world around us, a skin-encapsulated ego, alone in the cosmos, defending itself against everything out there. But here's the twist. When you really look for this it vanishes. Where exactly is it? In your thoughts? But thoughts come and go like clouds. In your body? But your body is a process, not a thing. Cells dying and regenerating, molecules exchange with air, water, food. Even your brain is constantly rewiring. There is no fixed you to be found. The ego is a ghost, a mirage. Watts would often laugh at how seriously we take this phantom. Ego, he said, is nothing other than the symbol of yourself. Like the word money is not actual wealth. The ego is not the actual you. The tragedy is that we live our entire lives imprisoned by this ghost. We condemn ourselves for not living up to its impossible standards. We resent others because their egos clash with ours. We fight wars, we destroy the earth, all in defense of something that doesn't truly exist. Forgiveness becomes radical when you see through this trick. Because what is there to forgive when the self you blame is just an illusion? You can't hold a mirage accountable. You can't punish a dream. When the ego is seen for what it is, a useful mask, but never the real face, self-condemnation begins to dissolve. And the same is true of forgiving the world. People hurt us, betray us, disappoint us. But when you look closely, you see it wasn't the living, breathing universe that wronged you. It was someone acting out of their own ego, their own illusion, their own ghost. How can you hate a shadow? This doesn't mean we excuse harm or abandon accountability. Watts wasn't naive, but he pointed out that forgiveness flows naturally when we see that the harm came not from essence, but from ignorance, from mistaking the mask for the self. He often used the metaphor of theater. Life, he said, is like a grand play. We put on masks, we play roles. Parent, child, boss, employee, victim, hero. And we get so caught up in the performance that we forget it's a play. Forgiveness is like remembering mid-scene that the villain is just an actor in a costume. You don't carry hatred for the actor once the curtain falls. You bow, you laugh, you applaud. This recognition softens everything. You don't have to keep punishing yourself for the role you once played. You don't have to cling to resentment for the parts others played. The curtain falls. The mask comes off. And the deeper truth that we are all the universe in disguise shines through. Watts once said, with that mischievous sparkle, when you know who you really are, you stop playing a game of ego. But the funny thing is, you can go on playing just for fun. That is the liberation of forgiveness. When the ego is unmasked, life becomes play again. You can make mistakes, fall short, stumble, and still smile because you were never bound to the ghost. You were always more than that. And this realization leads us to the final turn in our journey. If the ego is an illusion and life is not to be controlled but danced with, then what is left? What is a way of living that makes forgiveness natural, effortless, joyful? Forgiveness, at its core, is not something you do. It is something that happens the moment you stop clinging to the ghost of who you think you are. Alan Watts would remind us that life is not a problem to be solved, but a dance to be lived. And in a dance, there are no mistakes, only movements, only rhythms, only the endless flow of steps that create the beauty of the whole. To forgive yourself, then, is not to sign a contract declaring you are absolved. It is to realize you were never guilty in the first place, because the you condemn was only a mask, a phantom, a passing role in the cosmic theater. To forgive others is not to condone what was done. It is to see through their mask as well, to understand that beneath the blunders, beneath the cruelty, beneath the ignorance, there is the same universe that breathes through you, the same consciousness, wearing a different disguise, fumbling through the same mystery. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is remembering more deeply, remembering that you are not a separate creature, adrift in a hostile world. You are the whole world, playing at being you. And when you see this, truly see it, bitterness loosens, resentment evaporates, and life becomes light again. The weight you carried for years falls away, like fog dissolving in the morning sun. Alan Watts often said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at itself." And so, perhaps forgiveness is simply the universe smiling back at itself, not because it was flawless, but because it was whole, not because it was perfect, but because it was play. The dance goes on. The curtain rises again. And you, free at last from the ghost of ego, are invited to join it with open arms, with a lighter heart, and with a laugh. Forgiveness is a laughter of the cosmos, echoing through you,